Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ. We're presented by Penske. When you gain the right transportation partner, your business gains ground. Thursday night football sees the Jaguars at Jets. Now, you see New York laying 2.5 despite Jacksonville having the higher ticket count and the higher money count coming into this one, but it'll be interesting to see because our next graphic will show what we've seen. Now, some sportsbook had the Jets at 1 point catching a point, but again, this opened Jets laying 1. It currently sits at Jets laying 2.5, and it's one of a handful of games that has a total under 40. This one just an hour or two ago dipped from 37 to 36.5. All right, what's good, streaming people? Tommy Tran here with Leger Douzable, our NFL analyst, and our Pick 6 Pod super friend and draft analyst, Ryan Wilson. So, guys, tonight's game, not only is it the Jags and the Jets, it's a matchup of top 2 picks from the 21 draft that square off tonight. So here are the stats that matter, presented by Penske. Again, when you gain the right transportation partner, your business gains ground. Lawrence, Wilson, Lance, Pitts, Chase, and Waddle. Pitts as well. It's one heck of a top 6 draft when you take a look at that year back in 21. And then specifically, of course, we know Trey Lance is hurt this season, but 2 quarterbacks coming into this one with different vibes, if you will. Trevor Lawrence finally playing like the #1 pick that we all thought he'd be, coming out of Clemson. Zach Wilson only in the spot because Mike White has more than probably a dozen cracked ribs or is not really able to go. So, Leger, I'm going to start with you. What are you looking out for in terms of the quarterback matchup tonight with Lawrence and Wilson?
Yeah, Tommy, you kind of said it, right? These 2 quarterbacks are kind of on a different trajectory, right? If you look at Trevor Lawrence, it's amazing what happens when a head coach comes in and empowers you, right? Doug Peterson has done a masterful job not making the game easy for Trevor Lawrence, but getting him some easy reads. They do a lot of crossing routes. They do a lot of comeback hitch routes, so he can see the field wide open. Perfect example, last week in the red zone versus the Dallas Cowboys, his first touchdown pass, crossing pattern. That's his 3rd read. That's where Trevor Lawrence has really grown his game, getting through his progressions a lot faster. That was his 3rd read on that crosser to Zay Jones for a touchdown. Then also, Trevor Lawrence has done a better job of taking care of the football. If you turn it over, you lose games. Had 17 interceptions last year, 3 fumbles. Coming into this game, only 7 interceptions and 3 fumbles. Now, you know, the interception and the fumble last game could have really hurt the Jaguars and potentially made them lose that game, but he was able to bounce back from that. But he just processes the game really well, and Doug Peterson has done a really good job. If you look at Zach Wilson, right, before being benched, he was 5-2. The little things we talk about, Tommy, right, the fundamentals, the technique, just doing the little things and simple things right, correctly. Like, his footwork has been all over the place, and you would like to see that grow in year 2, and we haven't really seen that. Now, he had a really good first half last week in that game, but a lot of it was off platform, out of the pocket, which we know he can do, right? He throws from different arm angles. We know he can throw the ball, through a barn or a car wash without it getting wet. But you want to see him do the simple things. Stay in that pocket, those intermediate routes. That's where he struggles, and we just have not seen that progression this year from Zach Wilson.
And Ryan, for you, when you have a situation where you have the top 2 picks and they're both quarterbacks that are supposed to be franchise guys, will you be watching this with, say, your notes from 21 to see what you had written and what you had projected when you're watching these 2 go at it tonight?
Well, Leger hit the highlights, and I don't think you need the notes because Trevor Lawrence was always going to be that guy very on from his career in Clemson, and Zach Wilson sort of came on the scene late in his BYU career. And I think Leger has talked about the struggles of Zach Wilson, and the difference between the NFL and, say, playing at BYU is that at BYU, he had all day to throw the football. And when he had time in the pocket last week against Detroit, he was pretty accurate. Now, when things get hairy is when the pocket breaks down. He loves to go to his right. He loves to play off platform and out of the pocket. But teams are going to continue to make him stay in the pocket, and that's where he struggles. He struggles with accuracy on what should be relatively simple throws on short and intermediate routes. A lot of the yardage he got last week was on jump balls where he let his guys go make plays, including Garrett Wilson, and that seems like a good strategy at times. But at other times, you got to put the ball on the receiver. So I don't know if it'll be so much as referring to the notes. It'll be more trying to see if Trevor Lawrence continues with the arrow up performances and whether Zach Wilson can get back on track. Because the reality is you draft a quarterback, and these 2 teams are perfect examples, to change your franchise. Trevor Lawrence has changed into the Jaguars for the good after he got with Doug Peterson. And Zach Wilson, he ain't helping the Jets. That's just being real. Mike White is a much better passer, pocket passer specifically at this point, but obviously he's injured. So it's Zach Wilson's time to shine on a big stage. Field conditions aren't going to be great. And go out there and make plays. If you don't, the questions are going to continue.
All right, let's look at the prop market tonight. So we're taking a look at Lawrence or Wilson. You guys have both opted to target Zach Wilson. And Ryan, I'll start with you. You're going under 197.5 passing yards for Zach tonight.
Yeah, and in fact, he struggled to throw the ball down the field. Last week, as I mentioned, was the exception. But again, he's throwing a lot of jump balls. And this is even before I knew about the weather, Tommy, where it's going to be 45 to 50 degrees. It's going to rain the entire time. They don't ask him to do a lot. That New York Jets offensively, because they don't trust him. And that's the truth. He makes some poor decisions, some ill-timed decisions. Look, it's one thing if the ball gets tipped and it's intercepted. The interception last week is unforgivable, and it can't happen high school level on up. And I think those concerns in a game where you have to win because you're in the mix playoff-wise, it's going to be less about putting the ball in Zach Wilson's hand, especially with the weather, and more about leaning on the running game and, more importantly, leaning on the defense to help manufacture field position and then hopefully, worst case, get 3 points out of it, while also, as I mentioned, leaning on the running game. So I'm going under that number. 4 of his last 6 starts, he's been under that 197.5, and I don't think that changes tonight with the defense and the weather.
Yeah, Ryan, I like that prop bet because of the weather and everything you talked about, right? He had a really good first half last week, but again, it was predicated on him getting out of the pocket and off platforming. But I'm going to target Zach Wilson another way. His legs. I'm going to say he's going to go over 12.5 rushing yards. Let's not forget in this game versus Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars last year, he broke one for 50 yards to the house for a touchdown. If you look at what this Jaguars defense has done against quarterbacks that are athletic, not mobile quarterbacks, just athletic quarterbacks, they've given up that number, right? So I like Zach Wilson to go over the 12.5 rushing yards because it's going to be bad weather. It's going to be cold. I think it's going to be predicated off the run game, and I would not be surprised if Mike LaFleur uses him a few times in some zone read concepts today. All
right, so you're going over his rush total. Ardub is fading his passing total at 197.5. Now, if we get to anytime TD score, Leger, I'm going to start with you only because you picked a player that has longer odds than Ryan did.
Yeah, I'm going to go C.J. Uzomah, who had actually 2 touchdown catches last week for the Jets, right? Plus 700. You're talking about getting bang for your buck right there. I kind of hit on Austin Hooper a few weeks ago in that Tennessee Titans game versus the Green Bay Packers. I like C.J. Uzomah to get a touchdown because this Jaguars defense has given up a touchdown to the tight end position 3 out of the last 4 games. I think they're going to do play action just like they did last week, hit C.J. Uzomah in the flat for a wide open touchdown. I believe he gets into the end zone today.
And I'm going to go with the other tight end on the other side there, Tommy and Leger. I'm going with Evan Ingram, who was sort of disappearing act early in the season, but he's come on strong. 3 of his last four touchdowns this season have come in the last 3 games. The last 2 games, he has 224 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. He's been targeted 25 times in those games. And look, here's the thing. The Jets' defense is really good. There's no doubt about it, especially against number 1 and number 2 receivers. However, against tight ends, they've given up the 7th most receptions, including last week's loss to the Lions when Brock Wright took one to the house on a shallow, ran it 51 yards untouched into the end zone. Evan Ingram is a little better athlete. He's getting more involved. Trevor Lawrence is trusting him more, and I think there's an opportunity there for him to get an anytime touchdown as well.
All right, let's move on to the line itself. Again, I mentioned it all way got to 2.5. Now, Leger, I'm going to start with you because you always start with the Jets. So we already know that you're back at the Jets. Ryan, you're going money line with the Jags, so you think Jacksonville continues the hot form despite the weather conditions out there in Jersey?
Yeah, I mean, unless Joe Namath is walking through that door, to paraphrase Patino there, I don't know how Zach Wilson is going to help this football team play better than what we've seen with him under center. And look, a lot's going to be asked of this Jets defense, and they've showed up more times than not this season, certainly. As Leger noted, Quentin Williams is going to be back there, and he's been dominant in the middle of that defense. Sauce Gardner is playing like he's a 10-year vet, and his name is Darrelle Revis, so credit to him for that. But I think at the end of the day, and Leger touched on this as well, Trevor Lawrence is playing with a ton of confidence, in large part because of his head coach, and that team is playing with a ton of confidence, especially given the way they played the last few weeks as their franchise quarterback has stepped up and taken over games. Look, they have a chance to win the division. That's something to play for. The Jets desperately need to win. But again, if you're looking to your quarterback and it's Zach Wilson and it's not Trevor Lawrence, you probably have some doubts. And that's just being real. He missed some throws last week. I don't think that changes once the weather worsens. And I think Trevor Lawrence, steps up and continues to show why he was worthy of that #1 overall pick back in 2021.
Well, Ryan, And Tommy, this line has fluctuated like you talked about, T. And I think it's because, like you said, Ryan, the effect of Quinnen Williams. Yes, we know the weather is going to be bad, and I would think that probably benefits maybe the Jets a little more because, as you talked about it, right, sometimes they don't really trust Zach Wilson. They're not going to open up the playbook for him. They're going to really start the run game with Bam Knight and Michael Carter, and I think they're going to get Zach Wilson involved in the run game as well. But this defense, it's pissed off, right? They gave up, after scoring a touchdown to take a lead, this defense gave a 4th and inches for 51 yards to the house to Brock Wright. It's because of the defense, I think, is the reason why this line has fluctuated. Yes, Quinnen Williams, but C.J. Mosley, you can see he was rightfully so pissed off on the sideline, threw his helmet at the warm benches on the sideline. I think this defense shows up. I mean, they had 3 Pro Bowlers on that side that were just announced this week with C.J. Mosley, Sauce Gardner, and then also Quinnen Williams. I think DJ Reed is going to play with his hair on fire because he feels like he got snubbed when it comes to the Pro Bowl. I don't think it's because of Trevor Lawrence and the offense. I think it's because of the defense why the Jets end up winning this game. I'm taking the Jets to cover the -2.5. I know it's fluctuated. I took them earlier this week when they were +1, and I'm going to ride out with them on the -2.5.
All right, if you like the Jets, you can still get them less than a field goal, so 3 will certainly cash it for you. And since you guys are on opposite ends of tonight's game, I'm going to give you guys the teams that you selected in terms of odds to make the playoffs. So I'm going to give you the Jets at +360. What do you think about New York? And how much does Mike White have to actually be a part of it, which is something I didn't think I would say in Week 16 4 months ago, Leger?
Yeah, Tommy, I think he has to be a part of it. I think if the Jets win this game, and it's a close one, and Zach just plays all right, or even if he goes out and plays like he did last week, because let's not forget he did throw for 300 yards last week, but it just didn't look good in the third quarter, and Ryan alluded to it. That was an awful interception. It just seemed like his head was out of it for most of the third quarter. Now, he tried to salvage it with 2 big throws late in that game to try to put the Jets in field goal range to tie the game up and go into overtime. A 4th and 19 or 4th and 18 to Elijah Moore, and then also a 3rd and 19 to Garrett Wilson. But I think Mike White needs to come back for this Jets team to make a run. Let's not get it twisted. The Jets have to win out to go into the playoffs, right? If they win this tonight versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, then they have Geno Smith and the Seattle Seahawks on the road, and then they also have to go to Miami on the road versus Tua Tagovailoa, which could be a play and get in type scenario in Week 18. So Mike White needs to come back for the Jets. If Zach Wilson is the quarterback, I don't have as much faith in the Jets making the playoffs.
Leger, and I think the team in that locker room feels the same way. And it's interesting. Our guy, Stephen O at Sportsline, has the Jets at 19.6%. If they win this game tonight, it jumps up to 30%. They make the playoffs. But I'm going with the Jaguars, who currently have a 41% chance, according to Sportsline, to make the playoffs. And look, they're at 40% right now to win that division. Tannehill's out. That number probably goes up. I'm staying with Doug Peterson. I'm staying with Trevor Lawrence. They're going to keep things going in the right direction, and I like them to make the playoffs when we're all said and done.
All right, you see the Jags -160 there. Again, that is odds to win the division because Caesars actually has that make or miss playoff lock for them. But with the Ryan Tannehill news right now, they actually are favored over Tennessee in the AFC South. All right, guys, certainly appreciate a good segment there. I want to remind everybody about Sportsline's live betting hour. It is Thursday night football, so Eric Casillas, Todd Furman, Jason Lockenfor, Larry Hartstein and company going to have you through the night tonight. I'll be with you tomorrow night on Friday, and then, of course, there on Saturday, back with NFL Sunday. EK will have you covered.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.